Hi, I'm Cliff Lansley, and today we're looking at Meghan Markle. Now, world opinion is divided, especially over Meghan, and this has perpetuated over the last couple of years. They made a huge decision to leave the UK and step down from royal duties, and that's had a significant impact, especially with the media. And we later found out from the Oprah interview what that was about, and there was two areas. They were fearful for their security in terms of the threats and abuse they were receiving, is what they claimed. And second, she was sad and had mental health issues that she was getting no support for from the palace or from the institution. So those were the key issues which were going around. But some people weren't believing that and said, oh, it's because she's an actor and she's just trying to get attention. So that's one of the main reasons why we thought we need to just go on record of this is what we see, this is what we hear in terms of the stories around those aspects of Meghan's behaviour. So why are we going on record now, this week? It's because the Assistant Commissioner who covered royal protection and security and special operations in the Metropolitan Police has just left the Metropolitan Police this week, and his last interview, when he was safe to be more open than probably when you're mid-term in your post, was illuminating and related to some of the security issues around Meghan and Harry. So the first clip we'll share with you is Meghan being interviewed by Oprah in March 2021. Let's have a look at that.
It was really hard.
What do you mean?
He wasn't going to receive security. So we have in tandem the conversation of he won't be given security, he's not going to be given a title.
So she's claiming they would have no security. And this goes along with the title. Now, we're not here to judge the protocols of the royal family on whether they should have a title or not. What we're looking at is this a genuine anxiety and fear for their safety. And what we see during this short clip, and if you go back and look at the full clip, you'll see it throughout, is a consistency in the voice, in the illustrators and the nods and the hand movements. And behavioural analysis is not just a tool to use for detecting lies and deception. Behavioural analysis is also about, is the behaviour and the voice and the body and the face consistent with the story being told? So is it consistent with the account? Is it consistent with her baseline and with the context of being interviewed in a high-stake environment like this with Oprah? And our conclusion, certainly on this claim, is it was. So there's a consistency throughout to suggest that her anxieties are real. She's feeling that anxiety. Whether it's justified, whether she has a right to be, is beyond the scope of this video. But the behaviour is consistent with the claim. Let's have a look at what the Assistant Police Commissioner says about the security issues around the royal family.
You were in charge of royal protection. How would you characterise the threats that Meghan and Harry received?
Well, disgusting and very real. I've talked publicly for many years about the threat of extreme right-wing terrorism in this country. I've often been misquoted as taking my eye off the ball, as though I think that that was the biggest threat. I've never called it the biggest threat, but it was the fastest growing. And my wonderful friend and counterpart at MI5 will tell you exactly the same thing, that when I started in CT in 2015... Counterterrorism, it was about 6% of our total workload. Certainly when I left 15, 16 months ago, it was over 20% of our workload.
But there were many serious, credible threats against Meghan, were there, emanating from the far right in this country?
Absolutely. If you'd seen the stuff that was written and you were receiving it, the kind of rhetoric that's online, if you don't know what I know, you would feel under threat all of the time.
So you were convinced that there was a genuine threat to Meghan's life on on more than one occasion, on several occasions?
We had teams investigating it. People have been prosecuted for those threats.
So this seems to be quite an honest appraisal. By honest, it means there was consistent behaviours. At this point, it's worth addressing the headshake no's that occur when he says, we had teams investigate it. Now, whilst micro headshakes can sometimes be an area of interest when shown during an affirmative statement, the headshakes shown here are not micro in any sense. They're baseline for this individual, and it's used for speech emphasis. And similarly, you'll see the inner brow raise held throughout most of the clip appears to be his baseline within this interviewing context. And therefore, this doesn't meet the criteria to become a point of interest. Let's return to Meghan's interview with Oprah. And at this point, she's talking about the thoughts she was having and when she was suffering, she claims, from mental health issues. Let's revisit that.
Thoughts that I'm having in the middle of the night that are very clear. Clarification. And I'm scared because this is very real. This isn't some abstract idea. This is methodical, and this is not who I am. But we had to go to this event, and I remember him saying, I don't think you can go. And I said, I can't be left alone.
Because you were afraid of what you might do to yourself?
So she's describing the suicidal tendencies and thinking about taking her own life. And here we see an expression of sadness, and it's genuine sadness. Let's just zoom in here. Baseline for Meghan is her eyebrows are down. What we've got is a raising of the eyebrows, and you see some creasing in the middle of the forehead. So we've got two little fine lines up on the forehead there. And if you zoom in as well, you'll see the tears are starting to be generated in the corner of her eyes here. So you've got the watery eyes, you've got the eyebrows up, and you've got a flakiness in the voice. Those are pretty hard to fake. So we can conclude reliably that she's experiencing sadness when she's talking about how she felt when she's revisiting those thoughts back in those moments. Let's roll it forward.
And we went, and that...
I'm so sorry to hear that.
And that picture, if you zoom in, what I see is how tightly his knuckles are gripped around mine. You can see the whites of our knuckles because we are smiling and doing our job, but we're both just trying to hold on.
So those claims about how she felt, about she was so low that she was having suicidal thoughts, are consistent with the behaviour. The emotion fits with the description of how she was at the time. So back to the tabloids and some of the other analysts. But come on, don't forget, she was in the series Suits. She was one of the actors in that programme. So maybe, have you considered the hypothesis that she's acting? In fact, at a party she went to, she actually brags about, I can cry at will. And so is she turning these emotions on and off to support the narrative to try and convince us of something that's not true? Well, I've revisited baseline for Meghan when she's acting in Suits and the sadness that she's showing in this documentary. On the left, these are images from the drama. When she tries to force sadness, to pose it, her eyebrows are asymmetrical. This happens with all of us. If you try and do it yourself, if you lift your brows when you're not sad, there'll be some asymmetry between the brows. It's very hard to lift them evenly. Some people can, but she can't because she's trying here. And she's forcing the mouth up in a pout. So we've got a pout. This is like a child sulking, not an adult who's crying. Now, an adult who is sad is more like what we've just seen here on the documentary, with the brows flattened. This is her baseline. When the inner movement of the frontalis muscle is activated in sadness, it levels off the brows. So to conclude, the claims that she's faking it and she's lying about the anxiety and the fear is countered by the testimony we've heard from the police force who are there to protect her, and they know things which they can't talk about. And then the sadness and the feeling of well-being, which was at an all-time low, was one of the key motivators that prompted her to leave the UK, or for Harry to say, I'm not having what happened to my mother happen to you. And so for the protection of the family came first. So Harry, Meghan and their family, she's pregnant here with her first child, was the top priority. And to have the courage and the bravery to make such a huge decision and then explain why you've made it, which may reflect negatively on the royal family, is a huge, huge step. But the behaviour from Meghan supports and is consistent with the claims that she was having mental health issues and she was fearful for her safety of her and her family.